So what the court reporter asked is that as we hear comment tonight, please state your name, please spell your name, and give your address. And speak up. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Please note the fire exits in case there is an emergency. Tonight we're continuing the public hearing from September 22nd on local law 4 of 2014 regarding the rezoning of the retail district and the draft generic environmental statement associated with that. Okay?
The microphones do not broadcast. It's for the
I'll speak up.
recording.
Somebody speak up.
We're here to continue the public hearing from September 22nd, 2014 on local law 4 of 2014 regarding the rezoning of the retail district and the draft generic environmental statement associated with that document. Before we begin tonight's hearing, in which we will hear from the committee I appointed and ask to take a very hard look at the draft EIS, as well as from other members of the public, I want to say a few words about this process and where it will be going. There's a little bit of repetition for some of you, please forgive me. This process began with our concern about the condition of the vacant Aristides Shopping Center. That vacancy raised the question as to whether our zoning made that area economically unviable. Obviously, the condition of that shopping center was not what we hoped for in such a central part of the village. So with the guidance of our council, we adopted a moratorium when issuing building permits in that district. And in order to make that moratorium valid, we were required to perform a bona fide review of the zoning in that district. The owner of that property, Erstat Bill, presented us with a very preliminary sketch of one possibility for the site. That drawing has been published and has been on the internet for some time. We then asked our consultants, AKRF, to study that proposal and various alternatives, which are outlined in detail in Chapter 13 of the draft environmental statement, which include, among other things, no change, a reduced height building with 4 stories, and changing the existing 2.5 stories to allow mixed-use office and retail. Our analysis has also been affected by the litigation that the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development has commenced, I should say, against Westchester County. As part of that lawsuit, the monitor appointed by the district judge has found that Pelham Manor has zoning that is exclusionary, and as I have stated before, we disagree with that finding, but it is out there. The draft of this environmental impact statement has been available since May on our website. Numerous articles have been published in the Pelham Weekly with a chapter-by-chapter analysis, and we've had one public hearing. As we promised at the start of this process, we are not going to rush to judgment. There will be an open public discussion, and whatever this board decides will be based on our best judgment about the best interests of the village after we have heard the public. Now, one thing that we are considering very carefully is changed circumstances. I mentioned that this process began because of concern about the large vacancy in the shopping center. As you probably know, there is a new grocery store that's going to open there and occupy, I believe, 10,000 square feet, called Manor Market. And we are certainly considering how the fact that the property is going to be undergoing substantial improvement will change things. So that's, I hope, makes very clear where we are. Now, as I mentioned before, as part of the process, I asked a committee of citizens to take a very hard look and to analyze the assumptions and methodology that were used in the by AKRF to make sure that, in addition to other members of the public, we had the benefit of what I knew would be a very exhaustive and very intelligent review based on the people I asked to do this. So I would like to introduce them. The co-chair is Scotty Murdoch, who has been a resident of the village for more than 40 years, was a chief assistant United States attorney in the Southern District of New York, and is a very distinguished lawyer for whom my wife worked many years ago, and is on the board of the Pelham Preservation and Garden Society. Jennifer Monachino-Lepi, whose mother was my children's librarian, grew up in Pelham Manor and graduated from the high school. She was a district attorney in the Bronx and is also the current chair of the Pelham Preservation and Garden Society. Steve Bryan has lived in Pelham Manor for 7 years. He's the head of strategy and business development at SoundCloud, an internet company. Alex Cecil is a psychologist and is also a professor at Albert Einstein School of Medicine. Michelle DeLillo has been a resident of the village for 12 years. She is an engineer with over 25 years of experience in municipal engineering. Kevin Healy is an environmental lawyer, and indeed, because I'm a lawyer, I happen to know that Kevin is one of the, if not the preeminent environmental lawyers in the state of New York. Sameh Iskandar has lived in Pelham since 1987 and is also a professional engineer. Has worked with the New York City Department of Housing and Preservation and is now the president of a firm that is active in the development and management of multifamily buildings in New York. Tony Morella, who is one of the few people who attends all of our meetings, has been here in the same home for over 50 years. He works in the property and casualty insurance field. Steve Molyneux moved to Pelham Manor 5 years ago. He has an MBA from Wharton and an extensive business background. Carl Panuti has lived in Pelham Manor for more than 7 years and is an engineer with the New York City Department of Environmental Protection. And Bob Walder is a resident for 29 years and is a partner at the eminent law firm of Seward and Kissel in New York. So, and by the way, his wife is a school nurse in Sidewell, Columbia since 1997. So I think it's pretty clear from the brief biographies of these people that we have the great fortune of having a very distinguished group that has a wide variety of background and expertise in some of the relevant disciplines to give us the kind of critical assessment of the AKRF report that we are looking for. So I'd ask Scotty and Jennifer to tell us how you'd like to proceed.
I'll try and speak on the side, if I may, so that people behind me can hear. I'd like to thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your kind remarks on behalf of our committee. We have been in the process.
Yeah, Scotty, before you begin, one other thing I wanted to say. I've been asked by members of the board who so far haven't had a chance to chime in, that after we go for 35 or 40 minutes or so, I think they would like to make some comments too. So sometime around 9:05, 9:10, if you haven't stopped, we may take a little hiatus. I know as a lawyer you can go on for hours.
We're not going to be in that position this evening, I'm sorry to say. I don't mean to disappoint you. But the committee has been taking a hard look at the environmental.
One more thing for the television camera there.
Face the other way.
Maybe you could face the other way.
I think it's his better side.
I'll do what I can to
You
accommodate.
know, would actually, Scotty, do you want to stand up here? Would it be better? Why don't you stand up here?
Or you want to take my seat?
You can sit up here. I've sat on this.
Our committee has undertaken a very hard look, and unfortunately, we're still looking. We've been working very hard in our report, and we hope to have it in final form this evening, but I have to say that we weren't able to do that. But so as not to disappoint, I am here to deliver the introduction, if you will, to that report, so you get some idea of where we're going on this, but we still have a lot of work to do. Nevertheless, we hope we'll have our final report to the board within the next 10 days. And because this is an interim report and I have the authority of our committee to deliver this, I'm going to read the introduction so that I don't stray from what our agreed position is inadvertently. This is the introduction to the report of the Citizens Advisory Committee with respect to the Board of Trustees' proposed amendments to Article 15 of Chapter 210 of the Village of Pelham Manor's Code. The Citizens Advisory Committee, appointed by the Mayor of the Village of Pelham Manor, has, as requested, carefully reviewed and analyzed the amendments proposed by the Board of Trustees to Article 15 of Chapter 210 of the Village's Code relating to the small retail district at the intersection of Pelhamdale Avenue and Boston Post Road, and B, the draft generic environmental impact statement, the DGEIS, evaluating areas of potential impact of the proposed amendments, which was prepared by AKRF Inc., the consulting firm retained by the board to do so. The board accepted the DGEIS for purposes of public review at its meeting on August 25th, 2014. While making minor revisions to the existing language covering permitted retail uses in the retail district, the principal objective of the amendments is to rezone the district into a mixed-use retail district and authorize the construction of residential apartment buildings of up to 6 stories in height and with retail shops on the first floors. As explained more fully in the report, which we anticipate delivering to the board within the next 10 days, the committee recommends adoption of the additions to the permissible retail uses, but does not recommend adoption of the remainder of the proposed amendments. Based upon a careful review and analysis of the DGEIS, the committee has a fundamental disagreement with the DGEIS's conclusion that the proposed amendments will result in no significant adverse impact to the village and its residents. The first issue addressed in the proposed amendments is the addition of a few more commercial uses to those retail uses already permitted in the district. Most of these new uses simply confirm the legality of a number of businesses and categories which have been operating in the district for some time, such as the Edo restaurant and the Four Corners Pizza Parlor. The three new uses that may expand the list of retail uses slightly, childcare centers, health clubs and spas, and activity facilities, are obvious retail uses, are not controversial in any way, and standing alone would not likely require an environmental impact statement under New York State's Environmental Quality Review Act. The committee recommends that the board approve those changes. The second issue presents and the principal focus of the proposed amendments and the DGEIS commissioned by the board is the plan to rezone the retail district into a new mixed-use retail district. Most notably, the multi-story buildings could rise to a height of 6 stories or 70 feet. In addition, the proposed amendments would revoke Section 210-63B of the village's Retail District Code, which currently prohibits retail and residential mixed-use development in that district, and allow, for the first time, a combination of retail uses and residential apartments in the same multi-story buildings. The committee believes that the DGIS, which examines the proposed rezoning at what is characterized as a hypothetical maximum build-out, misses a number of key issues and fails to take the hard look at the implications of the proposal which is required under SEQA. The DGEIS's conclusion that no significant adverse impact would result from the construction and operation of a number of 70-foot-high mixed-use apartment buildings in the small retail district at the heart of our village is not supported by an adequate factual or analytical assessment. The committee recognizes that the DGIS is intended to be a generic document, and under SEQA regulations adopted by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation need not be as detailed as a project-specific EIS. It further understands that one or more supplemental environmental reviews would be performed in connection with specific projects as they are proposed. However, even under the principles applicable to generic environmental reviews, the committee believes that the DGEIS does not provide an adequate basis for the board to adopt the proposed rezoning. For the reasons that will be detailed in our report, the committee believes that the DGEIS seriously understates the potential adverse impacts of the high-density mixed-use development that would be permitted by the proposed rezoning on schools, traffic, architectural and historic resources, neighborhood character and utilities, and in the areas of noise, vibration, and other construction-related impacts. The committee commends the board for recognizing that the Four Corners area could be improved and for initiating a process that has sparked some discussion in the community as to how that objective could be achieved. However, the committee respectfully submits that if mixed-use rezoning of the retail district is to be pursued, it should be preceded by a planning effort undertaken with expert assistance and public participation, followed by a thorough and factually sound environmental review. Our committee's full report is being finalized, as I say, and hopefully will be submitted to the board by the committee within the next 10 days. Thank you.
Jennifer, do you have something you want to say, or does anyone else?
I may add a little color if I might. Is that acceptable? Jennifer Lathy, 95 Witherby Avenue. I'd just like to give a little bit of sort of background on what Scotty and I have received by virtue of the fact that we were the chairs of this committee. So I would like to thank Scotty for delivering the actual report in such a professional manner, and I'd also like to thank all of the members of the committee, many of whom are here tonight. Some had to work, and we all have day jobs. It's been a collaborative process, and there are many differing opinions, but I'm very thankful that we were able to achieve a consensus. What I'd like to do tonight, I have copies for the mayor, the board, Mr. McLaughlin, the council, and outside counsel, and the consultant. We received correspondence from many people in town who basically have concerns about saturation in terms of the traffic, infrastructure, parking, environment, schools. I haven't printed out for you everything, and some people, just by virtue of their personalities, don't feel comfortable doing what Scotty and I are doing, which is standing up in front of a large group and speaking to respected individuals who have elected official positions. It's just not a matter they feel comfortable with. And I did agree to pass along, in particular, 2 documents tonight. I had the privilege of going through the Pelham schools with Carmela Patera's 3 children. Her son is a very good friend of mine. She's very distressed about this entire development. And she says, I'm going to paraphrase, but I have the actual email for you. She's authorized me to use her name because she's in Florida. Hi, Jennifer. Sorry I won't be able to attend the 1027 meeting. I'll still be in Florida. However, I would like to reiterate my position. From Pelhamdale Avenue and Boston Post Road going north until Caroline Gardens on the right and Dunkin' Donuts on the left, there are 11 driveways. They include entries and exits of CVS, Citgo, Caroline Gardens, Dunkin' Donuts, Bank of America, and Schuyler Hill Apartments. On a light traffic day, it is difficult to get out of the driveway. It is nearly impossible when there is an accident on the Hutch or I-95, which causes bumper-to-bumper congestion. The addition of 200 apartments would not only add to this congestion, but cause massive tie-ups daily. I will send pictures in several emails. So I have some pictures for you. I haven't included them all. But there are a myriad of emails like this, and I think the genuine concern really relates to scale and density, and all of you take your job seriously. I think you're aware of those concerns. I just wanted to give you a hard copy from one person who wanted me to put her name on the record because she couldn't be here. And then one gentleman who's been following this closely, and again, as I said, some residents just don't feel comfortable giving their names or standing up and making a presentation, and it can be stressful, and not everyone has that capability. And I do feel that Scotty and I have a duty as co-chairs because we've made ourselves available to the public to pass along just some individual thoughts to you. One gentleman forwarded me the Erstat Biddle link to their website, and when they were advertising their property, and this may have been, I don't know the date of it, but when they were advertising their property, they highlight it as a high-traffic Route 1 location, and they referred to the Four Corners area as dense. So he just wanted me to pass along to you, and again, he doesn't feel comfortable coming forward, but I think it might be instructive for the board to see at least one of the types of emails that we're getting, which are really legitimate concerns rooted in personal experiences and based on the density and the scale that might be possible under the proposed zoning. So if I may approach, I just have copies for all of you of these documents. And that's all. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Who else would like to make a comment? Does anyone from the committee have a particular comment? Okay. Would you like to make a comment?
I'd like to speak about it.
Okay. Who would like to make the next comment? Okay, hang on, hold on.
Sure.
For the court reporter, please state your name, spell it, and give your address.
My name is Ann Keenan, K-E-E-N.
Speak up.
It's 599 Manor Lane. Okay. Just looking at the proposal for 100 or 200 occupancies there. Just wondering how that would impact Prospect Hill or Simon West schools. And would we have to add an extension on to the school to handle that population? And how that would impact our taxes? That's my statement right now. Thank you.
Tell us what you said.
She said, or she made a comment that whether we need to, I guess that we need to take into account the fact that 100 or 200 new residences there might impact Prospect Hill and Siwanoy schools and might impact our taxes, and we need to take that into account.
Well, I also said that we may have to build an extension to those buildings as well to handle that.
Next comment, sir?
Mike Fagola, 109 Country Club Lane,
Could you spell your name for the...
D-I-F-I-G-O-L-A. I went on the Pelham Manor website this morning, and I just, did some research about the town that I've lived in for 32 years, and it's a very small town. It's only 1.2 square miles. It's only got about 500 residents. It's advertised as an intimate and small village, which is made up of a community. And usually a community is made up of a group of people who have common attitudes and interests. A project of this size would, of course, obviously have a big impact on the small, intimate town that we live in. I know they keep mentioning about this $5 million extra in taxes. I mean, I don't know if that's correct or not. Sometimes it's usually blown out of proportion. But I'm in business, so I find, what is it going to cost you to get that $5 million? Sometimes it's not what you make, it's what you get to keep. We don't know what's going to cost you between extra firemen, extra police, extra schools, and, a lot of different costs. I know the town board is made up of a group of men who their job is to carry out the will of the people and the residents in the town. And I would just like to ask if I could take a count of how many people would raise their hand that would like this to be passed, and let's make a note of it, and then how many people would not like to have this passed. So if anybody would not like to have this passed, to raise your hand. Not like it. If you don't like to have it passed, raise your hand. So all these people. Anybody who doesn't want this passed, raise your hand.
Sir. Okay, thank you, sir.
So obviously, who wants it passed, raise your hands now. And as you can see, I think the majority is in favor of not passing it. I think they did a great job, the preservation department, and I think they stated everything, quite professionally, and I think we all feel the same. Thank you.
Anyone else? Sir.
I am curious where the trustees' heads are right now. If you were to vote in favor of this, what would some of the reasons be? What are we missing as a community? Maybe you have more information than we do. So I'd just love to know if there's something we're missing that might sway you to approve.
So, I think, although I said we'd go for a half hour, maybe this would be a good time to invite the trustees who have remained silent to this point to state what they're thinking, and maybe we should start with the most senior person who is
Trustees senior in age. Trustees. Well, I want to go last. I'll get
Okay.
As has been said tonight by the mayor and Mr. Murdoch. Can you hear me? This process has kind of taken on a life of its own. We started with very good intentions, looking into a more viable use of the shopping center where formerly occupied by Gristedes, because it was sort of an eyesore to our community. It was 10,000 square foot store, vacant, plus 2 other smaller stores at the time. And the owner of the property approached us with that rendering of that 6-story building. That was never our idea. And we looked into mixed use, and after all is said and done, I can tell you that I am for status quo, and I don't think anything that I've seen makes any sense at this point. Now, we did have in the interim, we did have a little wrench thrown into the works with HUD, expanding their interpretation of the settlement with Westchester County. The settlement said that Westchester County was to build 750 affordable housing units, which it has done, and the county was the signatory to the settlement. And this new administration has decided to come and explore each individual municipality. There are 31 municipalities who are eligible under the settlement, and impose their will on, trying to impose their will on us. So we had to take that potential rezoning of that area very seriously, and we did. And at the end of the day, I still think we should just wait and see.
Let me ask Trustee Vandenberg.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to just expand a little bit on what Lou Annunziata just said. When we looked at the Gristedes shopping center and 4 corners in total, which is what the zoning would cover, the proposed zoning would cover, about 2 or 3 years ago, we saw a vacant grocery store that was a Gristedes, and then it was something called Trader John's, and it was not successful. And there was a deterioration of that whole retail area as a result of the vacancy in that major, what you might call an anchor store. And the moratorium was put into effect to give us a chance to think about what might be done from our standpoint, from the village's standpoint, from the village government standpoint, to make that a more viable retail district, which we think would have benefit and would benefit the entire village, instead of having vacant stores there. Some of the comments we heard last week is how that's a destination for kids, and they love to go there and go to the pizza place and stop in CVS and buy some things for their family or what have you. It's a destination, and with a vacant Gristedes store staring at us for years, that goal of making it a good destination for kids and for families is going to be lost. Now, the moratorium was put into effect so that we could study, what exactly should we do? Could we change the tenor of the shopping center by changing the permitted uses? Could we change it for the better by changing the zoning? And one of the things that we were advised that we had to do was to do this in a bona fide way. We had to actually come up with some proposals in order to make the moratorium a legal and reasonable thing to impose on the property owners. The moratorium was a moratorium on building permits, so the property owners were restricted on what they could do with those properties while the moratorium was in effect. Now, the mayor, in his opening remarks, mentioned that there's a new tenant in the Gristedes store. It's Manor Market. It hasn't opened yet. Many of you have probably read about it, or you've gone past it and you've seen it, and you've heard in the Pelham Weekly or in some of the advertising that they put out what they intend to do with that they intend that to be essentially a gourmet market that's going to be in the heart of our village. And that's changed the circumstance. That has changed, in my view anyway, the need to really go very much farther with a rezoning in order to achieve our initial purpose. Trustee Annunziata also mentioned that even though this wasn't the motivation for the moratorium or for our thinking about rezoning, another factor that plays into our village's thinking about the future is the HUD lawsuit against Westchester County, which, just to be clear, is over as a litigation in the sense that there's not going to be a trial over whether there was discrimination, but there was a settlement agreement that was signed by the county government under the last administration of the county government. And that settlement agreement is what the so-called monitor, who was appointed by the judge who's supervising the case and the settlement, that settlement agreement is what the monitor is seeking to enforce. And in seeking to enforce that, he's singled out Pelham Manor, along with a handful of other villages, as having zoning that disparately impacts minorities. And that's based on statistics. Now, there have been two developments since we started considering the zoning, which impacts my thinking. One is that HUD itself issued a letter on September 24th, 2014, just a few weeks ago, criticizing the monitor's analysis. And the impact, as I read this letter, and I think it's shared by other members of the board and some legal counsel that I've talked to, the impact of this letter is to expand the number of municipalities in the county which are in HUD's view as discriminatory, expanded it from the handful, including Pelham Manor, to almost any small municipality in the county, which means that we're sort of not in the small target that HUD is looking at anymore. Now, every municipality, every small municipality in the county is going to have to be concerned about the impact of their zoning on what HUD thinks about their practices in terms of minorities. To reiterate what the mayor says, even when it was just a handful of municipalities that were in HUD's view as being discriminatory, we don't think that we have that problem here. We don't think that the zoning is discriminatory, and we don't think that there's a disparate impact on minorities as a result of our zoning, particularly the zoning in that retail district, which is what we've been talking about. The second development that took place that impacts my thinking in relation to the HUD situation is that the U.S. Supreme Court has recently agreed to hear a case coming out of Texas, which could pull the rug out from under HUD totally in this case if they decided a certain way. We don't know how the Supreme Court is going to decide it, and we certainly don't even know whether the case will ultimately reach the stage where it's going to be decided. But the issue in that case is whether HUD has to prove intent, that there was an intent by a municipality to discriminate when they passed their zoning. And there was no finding by the monitor that there was any intent in the case of Pelham Manor. They merely looked at statistics, and that's somewhat questionable whether they did that properly, but they looked at statistics and said, well, based on statistics, your zoning must have had some disparate impact because you don't have minorities spread out all around your community. So those two developments in connection with the HUD case impacted my thinking. So the three things that have impacted my thinking are the changed circumstances in the shopping center itself with a new store that I think we ought to give a full chance to develop and to see what changes that brings about in the overall viability and economic activity in that shopping center. And the two things about the HUD settlement that I just described. Those three things impact my thinking and say that, really make me come to the conclusion that even though the motivation and the intent of bringing up this zoning change was good, changes have taken place, and at this point, I think we should reject the law, the proposed local law, and maybe think over the next couple of months about changing some of the permitted uses under current zoning, such as Scotty Murdoch's committee report recommended, and think about some other things that we might be able to do to improve the economic viability of that shopping center, but not change the zoning.
Trustee Winston.
Okay, well, first let me thank all of you for coming out to these meetings. I hear you, the board hears you. This is the reason why local zoning is so important. It's part of the state constitution of New York. First of all, let me thank you all for coming out to all these meetings. And I hear you, the board has heard you. This is the reason why local zoning is so important is part of the Constitution in New York State. It's something that HUD wants to upend in the name of social engineering. Let me just say that the original intent of the rezoning of Four Corners turned into something that had nothing to do with the purpose of the moratorium. And rest assured, this trustee will not support any change in the code that will raise the height of these buildings.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be honest, I don't really know how I feel about this project because I don't think I know anywhere near enough about it. I think that the committee, and Scotty's comments were particularly apt, we need more information, a lot more information. It's obvious that, to me at least, the community has raised very legitimate concerns. Whether they're right or wrong doesn't matter. They're legitimate concerns. And in light of that, I have a two-part resolution I'd like to propose, Mr. Mayor. The first part is to close this public hearing, and the second part is to reject local law 4 in its entirety.
All right.
I said, is there a second?
What I had said was,
Okay.
let me repeat it. I'm proposing a two-part motion. Part one, close this public hearing, and part two, reject local law 4 in its entirety.
I second that.
I think for good form, we should break those down. The first motion is to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
I think there's public comment. They want to comment on that.
Can we be heard on this, please? Can I be heard? I don't know what the quorum is. I'd just like to be heard for a second.
Step up.
Really briefly, please. Al Cornaccio, 1011 Prospect Avenue. I appreciate everybody's comments. The trustees, thank you so much for being forthcoming and finally giving us your opinion. I'm very curious to hear what the mayor's opinion is before we close out the meeting.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Sure, C-O-R-N-A-C-H-I-O.
You want to hear my opinion?
You with us or against us, Mayor?
What?
You with us or against us?
You have a comment?
He made it. Can we do it next time? I have trouble with hearing. Can we get a PA system that works? We should have a PA system. We don't have to keep attacking you and say, what are you saying? Why are those PA for? I have a hard time hearing as it is, and it's like little mouse toys.
This isn't a PA system. You don't have any at all.
I mean, we can't afford to get a PA system in Pelham Manor? I don't understand. I'm John King, 599 Manor Lane. I'll just let the record. But this is, I've been to a lot of meetings, and I never heard of such a thing. People can't hear each other. And you have a microphone that doesn't work.
We gotta spend our money in better ways.
We usually only have 2 or 3 people here. So. But I will speak up so you can hear me. I've been asked to give my opinion, and I agree with my colleagues on the board. I think, as you've heard, we started this process because there was a tremendous problem that we perceived with the Gristedes property. We took action really that was necessary to stop what we thought was going to be a substantial deterioration of that property. The owner of the property was threatening to move in a way that we thought would be detrimental to the village. We took a very aggressive action in adopting a moratorium on the issuance of building permits. That's a pretty heavy thing to do because it affects property rights. In order to do that correctly, we had to take a hard look at the zoning there. And I think the record is very clear that we've done that in a very sincere and legitimate way. The owner came forward with an idea. That was one thing that was studied in addition to the other alternatives that were studied as outlined in Chapter 13 of the draft environmental impact statement. We've taken a hard look. The process is certainly complicated by the fact that in the real world, if any zoning change like this were to be enacted without a set-aside for affordable housing, we would definitely be sued by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. So it became a very complicated situation, but I think the process has worked well. We've had the community involved. We've had comments. We had Jen's and Scotty's ABLE committee looking at this, and I think we have reached a point where I think we are all comfortable, and I am comfortable certainly, saying that adopting this change at this time is not in the best interest of the village. I think we do. I think we will continue to look at alternatives that will improve the economic viability of the retail district. I think we all need to remember, although it's impossible to forget, that property taxes are a major issue in the village. We continue to work on economic development, primarily down at the old Imperial property, and are trying to get that parcel to become another piece of the development down there. We've had 2 very successful developments that have started to have a positive impact on property taxes. That's the process we have to continue. So my answer is very clear. I think that we have done the right thing. And when I look back on what would have the possibilities that might have happened at the Gristedes Center, as opposed to what we're going to end up with now, having gone through this process, that the best interests of the village have been served. So I think we have a vote. Trustee Schwarzfeld says it's one resolution. I don't know, John. Does it matter? Technically, should we close the hearing? Should that be a...
I would close the hearing.
Yeah, okay, so we have two separate resolutions. Resolution 1 is to close the public hearing.
One comment.
Excuse me, my name is Judy Clements, I live on Wynwood Road. I'd just like to know, since I'm happy with your thoughts and vote on this, but where does that leave us in relation to HUD? Can we be forced to change our zoning?
That's a question that I can't answer. I would have to be the Supreme Court to answer that. But I can tell you, we certainly don't think that they can, and I think there are many, many communities in Westchester and the county executive who share that view, and it will be over a lot of dead bodies before they do that. Okay. You know, there's an old, I happen to be a litigator, and when the judge has ruled in your favor, rule number 1, pick up your papers, thank you, Your Honor, and get your ass out. Another filibuster, go ahead, you get to do it. Because you're this is one of the 3 people who comes to every meeting, so he gets to filibuster. And I am one of them.
Anthony Morello, 103 Iden Avenue. I'm reminded of what...
Tony, are you going to tell a joke?
It's already been told.
Turn around so everybody can hear you.
Okay.
We can hear you.
I think Trustee Vandenberg has hit the nail right on the head. I want to direct your attention to a July 8th, 2014 editorial in the Wall Street Journal called Westchester, USA. This is where the battle is. Zoning. So I would like to make this available to the trustees, and maybe they can make copies for all that are interested.
What's your stuff?
Is there anyone else who would like to snare victory? And don't change our votes.
All right, so now, if you're looking at developing an Interior Brothers property down on the other side of the highway, I believe that they were looking at that, HUD was looking at isolation as one of the parameters.
It's not a residential area. It will be retail development.
Oh, retail.
There's no possibility of residential development down there.
Okay, thank you very much. Is that question?
Okay, so a motion has been made to close the public hearing. Let's vote. All those in favor? Okay, a resolution. We don't vote. And a resolution has been made to reject proposed local law 4 of 2014. Yes. A resolution has been made to reject local law 4 of 2014 regarding the rezoning of the retail district and the draft generic environmental impact statement associated therewith. All those in favor? Aye. The motion passes.